Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Welcome again, everyone. So glad that you're with us this evening. My love, my compassion goes out to you, to each of us in this pandemic experience, however you're experiencing it. Whether it is the struggle that many are feeling of being isolated, or that you have a family member, someone close to you, or perhaps you are in a healing condition. And my love and prayers are with you. All of ours are. So tonight we are continuing our series on Pema Chodron's When Things Fall Apart, with the chapter on this very moment is the perfect teacher. Now it seems that now, this very moment, can be a very difficult teacher for many of us, because there can be a very great deal of discomfort in the situations that we find ourselves in, the great change and adapting and uncertainty. We ask ourselves, or we ask others, when will things get back to normal? Just want to get back to normal and go to the store, go to the park, go to the beach, or whatever, you know? When will it be safe to be in crowds? When will it be safe to give my friends a hug? You know, we generally consider discomfort as bad news. So my first question for you, and this is an interactive session. Our satsang is an interactive experience. So after I complete my talk, we're going to have a spiritual talk back where we go through the comments that are on Facebook and see what you have left us in response, and we will respond and interact with you during that time. So I'm going to present a few questions in my talk for you to begin to think about and to begin to share about in the comments as we go through our time together. So my first question for you is, what have you learned through your uncomfortable feelings in this pandemic? Through being present to your own uncomfortable feelings, what has been the gift? What have you learned? Pema Chodron says that on the spiritual journey, we see the good news in these experiences of discomfort. She says feelings like disappointment, embarrassment, irritation, resentment, anger, jealousy, and fear, instead of being bad news, are actually very clear moments that teach us where it is that we are holding back. And they're like messengers that show us with terrifying clarity exactly where we're stuck. So we have the opportunity to be with our discomfort and know that in this challenging time, we don't need to create spiritual lessons for ourselves. We don't have to go out looking. This very moment is filled with those gifts of discomfort. Yes, discomfort. That any event, any person that is triggering us, bringing up unresolved issues within us, is the perfect teacher to awaken us. And if you're in the recovery, you know that recovery happens when you work in the areas in which you're struggling. You can keep working to perfect what's working, but the real recovery happens when you get dig in to those areas where you're struggling. And so what do you do when you've reached your limit? I reached a limit today. I'm just gonna, full disclosure, today was the day that it really hit me. I couldn't do one more screen. I couldn't do laptop, iPhone, iPad, TV, no screens. I just got to a breaking point. And I saw an article about Zoom fatigue. It was on National Geographic, I think, article. And it said how when we're in these meetings, because I feel like, well, I see people, I'm connecting with people, that our minds, because we're looking at, all these people in a gallery view, right? That there is a fatigue that comes with trying to pick up body language when you only see someone from the shoulders up, trying to figure out, we're watching everybody all at once, and just the amount of attention and the amount of energy that we put out trying to express our feelings, our intentions and sentiments through a camera on a screen. We've become two-dimensional, and that it can wear us out. That's a very real thing. So yeah, I reached my limit, and was grateful to remember that I had the blessing of some self-care with getting to go to a counseling session on Monday. And my therapist said, because I was telling her all the things that were on my mind, and she said, you need to go for a walk. You need to go for a walk. And so I was like, I'm going for a walk. No podcasts, no headphones, just me and my keys. And I took a walk around my neighborhood. I love my neighborhood. It's so beautiful and restorative. And I get to look at the trees and people's spring flowers, just hear the birds, and just disconnect from screens and just be. And it was just so healing for me to do that, just to change my environment in a way that was doable in this time when there's so many other ways that we care for ourselves that are not available. I have my whole self-care routine where everything that I was doing outside of my home, like going to jazzercise or the different things that I do, are all now on a screen. Now I have my support group on Zoom. I have jazzercise on Facebook. Different things that, like, wow, everything is now on the laptop. I'm grateful for my laptop, but it really, we need to take breaks. And so I found that was my limit for me today. It was, and it could be for you, too much time alone, or with the same people, with your too much time with your family, maybe. Tired of the uncertainty, stretched too far, or just it's all too much. And you look at yourself in the mirror and the salons aren't open and your grays have grown out. And you need a good haircut. And no matter how you look at yourself, you look rough. And so when we come to this point where we feel we've reached our limit, you either embrace it all or you push it all away. You have that choice. So where are you right now in your life? Are you in resistance or in acceptance? Be honest with yourself. I won't know. There's no test. Check in with yourself. Are you in resistance or acceptance? We have many ways that we can resist. There are addictions that we can turn to that arise when we meet our limit and we can't stand it. There's substances, of course. There's TV, addiction, food, shopping, which is so available to us online, social media, busyness, finding busyness, or anything that seems to ease the pain. We can dissociate in our own minds. We don't have to go anywhere to be in resistance to what's going on. And we could try to take the edge off the full impact of the pain by because we're we try to take the edge off because we realize that no matter what, perhaps it just doesn't look like it's going to turn out good ultimately. And so in these times, we lean into, and always, but especially now, the central mindfulness practice of meditation. Now, if we were in the pyramid together, we would normally spend a good length of time in the silence. But what we've discovered doing the meditation on Zoom is that if you just let it go silent for minutes and minutes, if somebody's joining, they may think nothing's happening. So we've been doing guided meditations, but to know that the practice that really supports us being present to our experience in this very moment is silent meditation, where we sit in the silence and we allow ourselves to see the thoughts and emotions as we're experiencing them, as they arise, without getting hooked by them. And so even if we're at our limit, even if we feel like we're shutting down, we don't go unconscious, we don't go numb, we're present. So when we're in this state of meditation and seeing our inner experience, we can see it more clearly so that we can let it go. And then we see how we can open up and relax. We allow ourselves to be present. So all of these places where we feel disappointment, where we feel embarrassment, where we struggle, where we fight, it can feel like a sort of death. There's so much death being reported now, and we can feel a sense of death in us as we feel kind of the normal ways that have gone away or changed. We can fight against our fear of death, or we can recognize that there is always something being born. There's always something being born. It's very healthy to feel fear when we've reached our limit, and even more healthy when we recognize that, we stop struggling against it, and know that that fear is indicating that we are moving into unknown territory. So I'm coming to my second question for you, for your sharing in the comments. What is your limit that is unknown territory for you? What evokes hope and fear? What is your limit that is unknown territory for you? And we all have limits. We all have limits. Maybe your limit now is going to visit someone that feels like a limit, that feels like fear comes up there. Or maybe going to a hospital. Maybe it's your garage and all that's in there, or your hall closet. For me last night, my limit was a roach in the bathtub. I couldn't do it. And we don't have a lot of bugs in our house, but there was one. I guess it came up through the drain, and I just was like, no, I can't. And that's grateful to have my husband go in for me. And I've dealt with bugs before, but that was like, no. So maybe that could be a limit for you. Maybe going into outer space is your limit, but sooner or later we reach a limit. There's a great story that Pema shares in the book about her teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and that the first time that she heard him speak to a group of children, and they were asking him if he was ever afraid or scared of anything, and he said that his teacher on his spiritual path taught him to go to graveyards, to go to places that scare him, and to experiment with things that he didn't like, to face his fears head on. And one time he was traveling with his attendants, and they went to a monastery, and as they got up to the gates, there was this large growling guard dog. And you imagine, like, teeth bared, drooling, huge teeth, red eyes, and it was struggling to get free. It was desperate to attack them. And they entered the gates, they walked past the dog, and suddenly the gate, the chain on the dog broke, and the dog rushed at them, and the attendants, they froze. They just screamed, and they froze in fear. And Rinpoche turned, and this part's amazing. He ran as fast as he could straight at the dog. And the dog was so surprised that he put his tail between his legs and ran away. I love that story. Imagine running toward your greatest fear rather than running away from it or hiding. So my third question for you in the comments is, so what happens next after you run toward your fear? Imagine what happens next after you run toward your fear. The Sufi poet Hafez says this: fear is the cheapest room in the house. I would like to see you living in better conditions. So what happens next when you run towards your fear? You move into unknown territory. That's the spiritual journey. That's how we grow. We move into that unknown territory. We're continually moving forward. It's the most important thing we can do. If you're wondering between standing still and freezing and moving forward, the answer is moving forward. Not to freeze in terror like those attendants did who were with Rinpoche. That's what happens when we reach our limit. Our bodies, our minds can tend to freeze. And so how do we move forward? How do we move forward? Well, Pema Chodron tells us this. She says, rather than indulge or reject our experience, we can somehow let the energy of the emotion, the quality of what we're feeling, pierce us to the heart. Pierce us to the heart. She said, this is easier said than done, but it's a noble way to live. It's definitely the path of compassion, the path of cultivating human bravery and kind-heartedness. And what's the gift of this? Of opening up, of allowing ourselves to feel the feelings and allowing our hearts to be open, is she shares this, that there is the discovery of egolessness. When we reach our limit, when we allow it to pierce our hearts, that we open, it softens us. And that's what happens when everything falls apart. We find a doorway. We find an opening, a softening. We open to the realization of clarity, sanity, and that we live in a loving universe, that there is a goodness in humanity, there's a support around us. And so the safe place to do this kind of practice is in meditation, in your time of silence, to just let the energy be there, to be present with our hopes and fears, so that we can awaken more in our lives. The good news is that I don't know any world situation that has been bigger than this in my lifetime, that big catastrophes immediately wake us up. We are waking up to the truth of who we are. So I want to close my talk tonight with this poem by Mary Oliver called When Death Comes. When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I look upon time as no more than an idea. And I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy and a singular. And each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending, as all music does, toward silence. And each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it is over, I want to say all my life, I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it is over, I don't want to wonder if I have made my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. I'm grateful for being in this world with you, and I join with you in wonder and amazement at what unknown territory we will be charting next. Thank you for your time and attention this evening. So now we are going to move into our time of spiritual talk back.
Well, thank you so much, Reverend Jeanmarie, for both your meditation and for your beautiful lesson. What a great invitation for us to enter into this kind of deeper reflection and using this moment, the present moment, to be that teacher. It's really powerful, isn't it? Thank you for doing that with us. Well, we have received some answers to your questions. One, the first question, Ramona says, I'm asking the universe, what can I learn from isolation? That's what she's asking about, isolation. What could be learned from that? Lynn says, my uncomfortable feelings are usually about missing being with others, so I send them a prayer and I feel connected. She has her own solution for that thing, for that fear or for that uncomfortable thing. Wendy says, I've learned how I hoard. It's not the stereotypical way per se, but she sees herself in a pattern. And Ramona says, feelings are not facts. I've been saying forgiveness prayers 30 minutes each day. So, Reverend Jeanmarie, in Ramona's world, I love her question. What can I learn from isolation? What are your thoughts about that?
I'm curious what has arisen for her in that. What can you learn? Well, you can learn what's going on within you. If you haven't been paying as much attention to it, it's really present in isolation. So how do you be with all that's going on within you when you're alone and it becomes louder and more present? So there is the opportunity in isolation for much greater compassion, understanding, awareness. When we have self-awareness, it moves to, it brings forth self-knowledge and Christ consciousness. That is the beginning of Christ consciousness. We start with self-awareness, and that leads to self-knowledge with the capital K, that higher knowledge. So it's the beginnings of that shifting into higher levels of consciousness when we embrace that opportunity for isolation as an opportunity to know ourselves more. And when we know more what is the human self, then it becomes even more clear, I believe, what the Christ self, what the divine self is. And really there's no separation. It's not like human, divine, it's all, one. But that's the progress that I understand and the spiritual path and where we begin.
Right. I just noticed there is an answer. Doug says, I'm fine with some isolation. I've lived alone for years and find peace in it. There's always plenty to do when I want to, even during this time of social distancing. I do miss my family, my church, and my friends. So he's finding balance, it sounds like, finding a way to be both isolated and active and engaged. Bonnie says, I felt such a low energy this morning, probably knowing that today I had to file an unemployment application. I'm practicing turning my concerns over to God. Yeah, there's a lot of us using our faith and our principles double time right now, finding ways to do that.
Yeah.
Question 2, you have some answers to those. Here we say that 3 different people said acceptance. Acceptance was the thing. You want to repeat that question?
Well, the question was, what is your limit that is unknown territory for you? So I'm thinking that when they reach their limit, that's when they experience acceptance.
Right. Yes, exactly. Bonnie says, I'm pretty good. I'm doing pretty good with acceptance, even though it's uncomfortable. Yeah, kind of stretching a little bit. Keith says, I have more peace and strength in my meditation than I truly thought possible. It speaks directly to my fear and anxiousness, truly reminded that there's only God and love.
Yes.
Yeah,
we are seen, right, in the anxiousness, that God is there in the midst of that experience, and not just in the peace that we think, oh, there's the presence of God, that even in the uncomfortable discomfort, that there God is right with us.
And the 3 closing comments here come from Romana. She says meditation helps. Mm-hmm. Carrie says reflecting, and 3 other people appreciate guided meditation. So, so there you are. It's like, when we're really struggling, being able to disconnect and then go inward is the tools that people seem to be using and finding useful.
I hope that container box was helpful for everyone today. That's something that you can continue to use in your life anytime that you need to put your stuff away for a while and give yourself a break so you can have some space. Nothing wrong with doing that. That's a healthy thing, and it's good for you on all levels.
So what was your 3rd question? We have a few.
The 3rd question was, so what happens next after you run towards your fear?
After you run towards your fear. One says, Sonia says, starting a new career.
Yeah, and you run towards your new career. What happens? Could be success, could be abundance. There's a fear. People have fear of failure and fear of success. I've had both. Mm-hmm. And what can we use our energy to imagine what's the best that could happen as you run toward that fear? What's the best that can happen? And what really is the chance that the worry can turn into a reality? Usually our fears are, there's a bug in here. Usually our fears are unfounded and low percentage of possibility. So we're really is a chance that worry could turn into a reality, and what's the best that could happen. And let's keep our focus and attention on that as we move toward that unknown.
Mm-hmm. Right. Says, oh, I'm sorry, David, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to offer this observation that for me, my greatest concern, my greatest fear, I don't really feel it as fear, but my discomfort is not merely in the not knowing, but it's that no one knows. You know, it's one thing for me to have some uncertainty about some aspect of my life, about my future, but truthfully, it's not knowable right now. And I can stir up in that a little bit. And when I get overwhelmed, the tool that I'm using that keeps working, is do the next right thing. And then only do the next right thing, without regard to all the next right things that come next, but just the next right thing. And it, I get some traction on that. And it helps me through things that I don't necessarily enjoy doing, that I can feel effortful. But if I don't have an opinion about how much effort it takes because I'm just doing the next right thing, then I can move through it much more easily. And then pretty soon I find myself on a walk with my son, or I find myself, doing something that does bring me joy. And it's not because I had that intended goal. It's that I was doing the next right thing, just living it moment to moment.
Sounds like you found the path to be really present in this. That's great, because there's uncertainty. Even if they do know, there's always something else they don't know, right?
Yes.
That's that all ever-present uncertainty. That's part of our human experience. We've got a certain limited field of awareness and knowledge, and we never get the whole picture. Yeah.
Well, this is a good time to take all of the things that have been stirred up in this time, and the questions and the ways in which, thank you, all of you who shared your thoughts. I know that on Facebook Live, you can see each other's comments and, respond and react. Please do that so that you guys can have a conversation without us. But we wanted to be able to address some of those things and kind of bring them into this discussion. But it's a great way for us to kind of mull over, not only do we see a lot of similarity in some of your comments, that we're having similar reactions and similar experiences, but we're also moving forward together and we can share with one another.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.